Daniel 9:27 uses one specific Hebrew word that changes everything about what's happening right now. The word is gabar. It doesn't mean create, it doesn't mean invent, it means to confirm, to strengthen something that already exists. And on January 16th, 2026, that's exactly what happened. The Abraham Accords from 2020, those peace frameworks everyone said were impossible, just got formalized, strengthened, given binding authority through a new board with official UN Security Council backing. 60 nations received invitations to participate. 60. Daniel wrote that this confirmation would be with many, not one nation, not two parties, many. But here's where it gets specific. The man at the center of this board holds no government position, no official title, no elected office. Jared Kushner is a private citizen, yet he sits alongside the Secretary of State and World Bank President with authority over territory, reconstruction, and peacekeeping. Revelation 17 predicted this exact structure. Kings without kingdoms who receive temporary power for one specific purpose. We're watching Phase 2 unfold right now. And what this board actually controls? That's where everything changes. The White House made the announcement on January 16th. They're calling it the Board of Peace. And right away, you need to understand this isn't like previous peace initiatives. This has teeth. First, UN Security Council Resolution 2883 passed in November 2025 with 13 votes in favor. That resolution authorized the establishment of a temporary international stabilization force. It gave legal framework to everything this board does. This isn't just American diplomacy with international support. This is codified international law. Second, the scope. This board oversees Gaza's transition from ceasefire to full demilitarization. Hamas disarmed. No rockets, no tunnels, no military infrastructure. It manages reconstruction, billions of dollars flowing into rebuilding devastated territory. It oversees the establishment of governance through a Palestinian technocratic committee led by appointed administrators, not elected officials. And it controls international peacekeeping forces, monitoring compliance and maintaining security. But here's what separates this from every peace effort in history. Trump has explicitly said, Gaza is just the pilot zone. The stated ambition extends far beyond one territory, and the White House called it a bold new approach that could expand to resolve all kinds of global conflicts. Trump himself suggested it might replace or rival the United Nations, a model designed for global expansion, starting with Gaza, already operational. And the person who built the foundation for all of this? That's the part that doesn't make sense. Jared Kushner holds no elected office. He has no formal government position, no diplomatic title. He's a private citizen running an investment firm called Affinity Partners. Yet when the Board of Peace membership was announced on January 16th and 17th, there was his name, right alongside Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, right alongside A.J. Banga, President of the World Bank, right alongside Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. How does someone with no official position end up at the table where global governance is being designed? This isn't the first time, and that pattern matters more than you might think. When the Abraham Accords were being negotiated in 2020, Kushner was at the center. No formal diplomatic training, no previous government experience, but he traveled between capitals, built relationships, and secured agreements that everyone said were impossible. Israel normalized relations with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. 4 nations that had been in a state of war with Israel for decades suddenly opened embassies, established trade, began security cooperation. Then Trump left office in 2021. Kushner disappeared from public view, started his investment firm, stayed quiet for nearly 4 years. Then the Gaza crisis erupted. And who reappeared? A Kushner, quietly behind the scenes, building frameworks, negotiating terms. Here's what makes this unusual. Administrations change, negotiators get replaced, old alliances fall apart. But Kushner transcends the normal political cycle. He can travel between capitals without the scrutiny that follows official diplomats. He can hold meetings that don't appear on any schedule. The access he has is different. The continuity he represents is unprecedented. And that's exactly what makes the Abraham Accords so important to understand. For decades, the rule in Middle East diplomacy was absolute. You cannot have Arab-Israeli normalization without solving the Palestinian issue first. Every president accepted it. Every diplomat repeated it. Every peace plan was built around it. The Abraham Accords shattered that assumption. Now, Kushner went around the obstacle that had blocked everyone else. He didn't solve the hardest problem first. He built momentum by starting with parties who were already secretly willing. UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, all normalized relations with Israel. No resolution of the Palestinian conflict required. No final status agreement. No solution to Jerusalem. But here's what most people miss about the Abraham Accords. They weren't traditional peace treaties. They were alignment frameworks, economic cooperation, security coordination, regional realignment around shared interests and shared threats. Primarily, Iran. This wasn't about ending hostility. This was about building infrastructure for ongoing coordination between nations that weren't supposed to cooperate. The Abraham Accords proved the concept. They showed Kushner's unconventional approach could accomplish what decades of traditional diplomacy could not. And now that proof of concept is being institutionalized, formalized, given structure, given authority, given a board. But the real question is this: how does what's happening now connect to what Daniel wrote 2,500 years ago? Daniel 9:27 says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease." Most people focus on the wrong part of that verse. They focus on what happens in the middle of the week, but the key is in the first phrase. He shall confirm the covenant. Not create, not originate, not invent, confirm. In the original Hebrew, the word is gabar. Bible scholars consistently point this out. It means to strengthen, to make strong, to make binding something that already exists. The covenant isn't invented from nothing. It's strengthened, formalized, made official. Do you understand what that means? Daniel didn't say the end times figure would come up with a brand new covenant from scratch. He said this figure would confirm, strengthen, formalize something that was already in motion. Now think about what we just discussed. The Abraham Accords already exist. The Gaza peace framework already exists. The international structures for Middle East coordination already exist. What would it take to confirm these existing frameworks? To strengthen them? To put binding authority behind them? To transform loose agreements into something institutional? That's not future speculation. That's what happened in January 2026. Existing agreements being formalized. Existing frameworks being strengthened. Existing coordination being institutionalized. The Board of Peace isn't creating something new. It's confirming something that already exists. And Daniel said that's exactly how it would happen. But the word confirm isn't the only detail Daniel gave us. Daniel didn't just say the covenant would be confirmed. He said it would be confirmed with many. Not with one nation, not with two parties, with many. Now look at the Board of Peace. When Trump announced invitations, approximately 60 countries received them. 60 nations invited to participate in a single coordinated framework. The Executive Board, the core steering group, includes 7 founding members. President Trump as chairman, Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy to the Middle East, Tony Blair, a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Ajay Banga, President of the World Bank, Mark Rowan, CEO of Apollo Global Management. But that's just the steering group. The broader Gaza Executive Board includes representatives from Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, the UAE, and international institutions. Countries as diverse as Belarus, Morocco, Hungary, Canada, Vietnam, Kazakhstan, Argentina, and Paraguay have received invitations. Egypt's El Sisi, Turkey's Erdogan, Even Russia's Putin received an invitation. And here's what should stop you cold. Some of these nations are rivals. Some are outright adversaries. Turkey and the UAE have been on opposite sides of regional conflicts. Saudi Arabia and Qatar had a diplomatic crisis just a few years ago. Yet somehow, they're all being brought to the same table, all coordinating under the same framework. Two with many. Daniel wrote those words over 2,500 years ago. But there's something else John described in Revelation that previous generations couldn't have understood. I need to be clear from the start. Revelation 17 describes events that occur during the tribulation period. We are not in the tribulation. The events John describes have not yet occurred. But Scripture often casts shadows before fulfillment. Patterns emerge, infrastructure develops, and understanding what the final form looks like helps us recognize the preliminary structures. With that context, look at Revelation 17:12-13. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Let me break this down. To 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet. These aren't traditional monarchs. They don't have kingdoms in the normal sense. No territories, no thrones, no hereditary claims to power. Yet they function as kings. They wield authority. They exercise influence. Now think about the Board of Peace membership. Ajay Banga is president of the World Bank. He doesn't represent a nation. He represents a global financial institution. His authority comes from economic leverage, not territorial sovereignty. He has no army, no flag, no kingdom, but he controls capital flows that affect billions of people. Mark Rowan is a private equity billionaire, CEO of Apollo Global Management. His power comes from capital, not citizenship. He has no kingdom, yet both sit on a board with formal international authority. Previous generations reading Revelation would have struggled to imagine what kings without kingdoms actually meant. How could someone be a king without territory? How could someone wield royal authority without a throne? We don't have to imagine anymore. Global finance, international institutions, private sector billionaires, multilateral organizations. This is power without borders, authority without traditional kingdoms, influence concentrated in the hands of figures who rule through coordination, not crowns. But there's more to what John described. Look at the next phrase in Revelation 17:12. But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Their authority is temporary, delegated, tied to a specific period. The Board of Peace operates on phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, defined periods, or limited mandates that can be extended or terminated. Temporary authority for specific purposes. This isn't permanent governance, it's delegated power for a set time frame. Exactly what this passage describes. Now look at verse 13. These have one mind. They're unified, despite different backgrounds, different interests, different spheres of influence. They operate with one purpose. They coordinate. And that coordination is what makes them powerful. Turkey and the UAE, rivals in regional conflicts. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, diplomatic crisis just years ago. Russia and Western powers, adversaries on multiple fronts. Yet they're all at the same table, all working toward common objectives, all operating under one framework. Think about what it takes to bring adversaries into alignment like this. Economic incentive, security concerns, to shared threats, regional stability, access to reconstruction contracts worth billions, different motivations, same direction, one mind. I'm not saying the Board of Peace is the fulfillment of Revelation 17. We are not in the tribulation, but I am saying this. The structures being built today look exactly like what John described, and Trump has been explicit about where this is heading next. Gaza is the pilot zone. Trump has said this repeatedly, but the stated ambition extends far beyond one territory. The White House called it a bold new approach to resolving conflicts. Trump himself suggested it might replace or rival the United Nations. Think about what that means. a framework that bypasses traditional diplomacy, that brings together adversaries under economic and security incentives, or that operates with UN authorization but isn't bound by UN bureaucracy, that uses phases and temporary mandates instead of permanent institutions, and it's coordinated by figures who hold no elected office, who transcend political cycles, who wield authority through capital and connections rather than territories and thrones. This model could expand to Ukraine, to Taiwan, to any region where traditional diplomacy has failed, existing frameworks confirmed, strengthened, institutionalized, with many nations, kings without kingdoms, temporary delegated authority, one coordinated purpose, every detail matches. But here's what nobody's asking. And this is the question that should concern everyone, regardless of whether you believe in biblical prophecy. Who actually controls this? When power becomes this concentrated, this coordinated, this detached from traditional democratic accountability, who's really making the decisions? And what happens when Phase 2 becomes Phase 3? 5 prophetic details, all matching current events with precision that's hard to dismiss as coincidence. A covenant confirmed, not created. With many nations, not just 2 parties. Authority without kingdoms, temporary delegated power, unified coordination despite conflicting interests. Daniel wrote about it 2,500 years ago. John described it nearly 2,000 years ago. And we're watching the infrastructure get built in real time. I'm not claiming we're in the tribulation. Scripture is clear about what must happen first. But patterns are emerging, structures are forming, and the people who understand prophecy are paying very close attention to what comes next. Because if this is just the pilot zone, if Gaza is just Phase 2, if this model expands globally, like Trump says it will, then the question isn't whether this matches prophecy. The question is, what happens when they move to Phase 3? And nobody's talking about what Phase 3 actually involves.